How did Hitler view Zionism? Did he favor it because it meant the Jews would leave Europe, or was he opposed to it? Because it may sound strange to hear, both the Nazis and the Zionists had common interests. Find out more about how Hitler viewed Zionism today. Good to have you back on the channel. If you're new, my name is Stefan. I'm a Dutch history teacher and I make videos about history for you. If you like that, please consider subscribing and do not forget to hit the notification bell. You can support me financially via Patreon, PayPal, Super Thanks, or buy me a coffee. Let's start. In a previous episode, we talked on Hitler's views on British Mandatory Palestine. British Mandatory Palestine was established after the First World War. The region had been under Ottoman control before and during World War I. The British forces captured the area. In November 1917, the British issued the Balfour Declaration, in which was stated, His Majesty's government view with favor the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people, and will use their best endeavors to facilitate the achievement of this object, it being clearly understood that nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine, or the rights and political status enjoyed by Jews in any other country. This promise would backfire in the interwar period, as the British were granted a mandate over Palestine, which meant they would occupy the area temporarily before a long-term plan would be implemented. In the interwar period, Jewish migration from Europe to Mandatory Palestine increased. This caused tensions with the local Arab population. More and more violent clashes ensued. The concept of Zionism originated in the 19th century. During this century, nationalism gained considerable momentum, including among European Jews. They were a people without a state. Zionism, founded by the Austro-Hungarian Theodor Herzl, sought to establish an independent Jewish state where the Jews could live in safety. This was in response to persistent anti-Semitic violence in Europe. But the question was where this state should be located. At the beginning of the 20th century, there was the Uganda plan. Argentina was in the picture for a while, and in the 1920s and 1930s, Stalin founded a Jewish autonomous oblast in the far east of the Soviet Union, near the border with China. That turned out to be a huge failure. I visited that place in 2019 and made a video about it. And the French were talking about Madagascar. Yet Palestine remained the preferred option because that was where the Jews had their origins. After the failed beer hall putsch, in which Hitler tried to seize power in Munich, he went to prison, and there he wrote his book Mein Kampf, or My Struggle, which was released in 1925. A few times in this book he addresses Zionism. He reflects on the issue when writing about the Jews he encountered in Vienna, where he lived a while prior to World War I. A great movement called Zionism arose among them. Its aim was to assert the national character of Judaism, and the movement was strongly represented in Vienna. To outward appearances, it seemed as if only one group of Jews championed this movement, while the great majority disapproved of it, or even repudiated it. But an investigation of the situation showed that those outward appearances were purposely misleading. These outward appearances emerged from a mist of theories which had been produced for reasons of expediency, if not for purposes of downright deception. For that part of Jewry which was styled liberal did not disown the Zionists, as if they were not members of their race, but rather as brother Jews who publicly professed their faith in an unpractical way, so as to create a danger for Jewry itself. Thus, there was no real rift in their internal solidarity. This fictitious conflict between Zionists and the liberal Jews soon disgusted me, for it was false through and through, and in direct contradiction to the moral dignity and immaculate character on which that race had always prided itself. He stated he was disgusted by the Jews of Vienna. Interesting enough is that we don't really know exactly when Hitler's anti-Semitism started. Most historians agree his anti-Semitic views developed after the First World War. Yet the text I just read does reflect Hitler's views on Zionism in the mid-1920s when he wrote the book. He doesn't mention it often though. Later in his book he addresses the issue once more regarding Palestine. When the Zionists tried to make the rest of the world believe that their new national consciousness of the Jews will be satisfied by the establishment of a Jewish state in Palestine, the Jews thereby adopt another means to dupe the simple-minded Gentile. They have not the slightest intention of building up a Jewish state in Palestine so as to live in it. What they really are aiming at is to establish a central organization for their international swindling and cheating. As a sovereign state, this cannot be controlled by any of the other states. Therefore, it can serve as a refuge for swindlers who have been found out, and at the same time, a high school for the training of other swindlers. Hitler basically denies the fact Jews want to have a state of their own to live in peace, but rather to continue so-called swindler activities. Another document I looked at was Hitler's collection of speeches, 1922-1945, in which he addresses the issue of Palestine several times, yet he doesn't speak about Zionism. On several occasions, he talked about Palestine to speak bad about the British, and he wanted to point out they are hypocrites for criticizing German policies. For example, on the 1st of April 1939, in the aftermath of the German takeover of the Czech lands. Indeed, we do not want to be in Palestine. And just as we Germans have no business being in Palestine, the English have no business being in our German Lebensraum. One time he showed sympathy for the Arabs, but this was only to criticize the British. Hitler did not have much sympathy for the national aspirations of the Arab Palestinians. Before World War II, he envisioned an alliance between Germany and Britain, and he also saw the Arabs as an inferior race. During the 1936-39 Arab Revolt, Germany ignored Arab Palestinian requests for material assistance. When World War II broke out, Britain was now at war with Germany. During the war, Hitler found an ally in Haj Amin al-Husseini, the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem. A very interesting subject I'm not going to dive into right now, as I addressed him in previous videos. Also because we're getting ahead of ourselves, as I want to point out a very peculiar agreement that was signed in 1933, and that was the Haavara Agreement, signed between Zionist Jews and Nazi Germany on the 25th of August 1933. I did address this agreement briefly in previous videos, but let's discuss it more in depth this time, because it may sound impossible to believe. Did the Nazis and the Zionists have common interests? Yes. Was Hitler a Zionist? No. So what were the common interests? Well, Hitler wanted to segregate the Jews from the Aryan population. The Zionists wanted a Jewish state outside Europe, which effectively meant the Jews had to leave Europe. When Hitler rose to power in 1933, anti-Semitism became the German government's official policy. In the following months, administrative measures were implemented to segregate the Jews from the rest of German society. What was the exact purpose of this? According to one eminent Jewish legal expert, the inevitable consequence of the campaign of dismissal and exclusion by law and of violence and outrage under the protection of outlawry of Jews and liberals was a large exodus of Jews, non-Aryans and liberals from Germany. How did German Zionists react to the Nazi measures? The Zionist movement believed Jews shouldn't be part of Gentile society. Because of the rise of Nazism, the Zionist movement increased in strength among German Jews. In August 1933, an agreement was signed. Known as the Haavara or Transfer Agreement, it allowed German Jews to emigrate to Palestine with a portion of their assets. At the time, Nazi Germany was under pressure from a global economic boycott. Meanwhile, British immigration policies in Palestine made it difficult for Jews to enter unless they could prove they had substantial financial means. To solve both problems, a deal was struck. Jews leaving Germany would deposit their assets into a German trust. That money would then be used to export German goods to Palestine. Once there, the immigrants would recover part of their money minus taxes and fees. This allowed some 20,000 Jews, roughly 37% of all German Jews who went to Palestine, to escape with part of their wealth intact. At the same time, the Nazi regime boosted exports and encouraged Jewish immigration. But by 1937, however, things got complicated. By this point, the Arab Palestinians had risen against the British in a large-scale revolt that would last until 1939. The Arab revolt in Palestine raised concerns in Berlin. One German diplomat warned, "We have disregarded the danger that the Arabs could become our opponents." Heinrich Dule, consul general in Jerusalem, stated the following: "Arab fantasies about a German intervention based on the fact that the Führer shows interest in the Palestine question can be explained by the Arabs' desperate situation in their struggle against the Jews and the English." As talk of a Jewish state grew, Nazi leaders feared it might strengthen international Jewry, as they put it. Foreign Minister of Germany, Konstantin von Neurath, responded by stating, "The formation of a Jewish state is not in the German interest." Instead, he called for closer ties with Arab nationalists to counterbalance any future Jewish state. Still, there was division within the Nazi government. Some supported the Haavara Agreement for practical reasons, others opposed it, arguing it helped build a Jewish homeland with German funds. The internal debate wasn't resolved until early 1938, when Hitler personally decided that Jewish immigration to Palestine should continue. Even so, Nazi diplomats in the Middle East were instructed to openly support Arab nationalist movements. Palestine had become more than just a destination for immigrants. It was now part of Nazi Germany's foreign policy strategy. The SS's security service, the SD, also took an interest. Because most other countries had closed their doors, Palestine remained the most realistic escape route for German Jews. Zionist organizations were tolerated so long as they facilitated emigration. The complete expulsion envisioned by the SD implied tolerance of the Zionist organizations active in Germany, which, in contrast to assimilation-oriented Jewish groups, were able to continue their work largely unopposed. The other side of the segregation promoted by the Nuremberg laws was the use of all available means to promote the Zionist emigration of Jews from Germany. One chilling proposal from 1937 summed up this logic. Jews that would immigrate from Germany should be sent only to Palestine. This would be fully in the German interest. In the twisted calculus of Nazi policy, emigration, propaganda, and foreign relations all intersected in the fate of Germany's Jews and in the sense of British-controlled Palestine. As Nazi policy radicalized from forced immigration to mass murder, any tactical use of Zionism faded. Hitler increasingly linked Zionism to what he considered the global Jewish conspiracy. The idea was that whether Jews were communists, bankers, or Zionists, they were all enemies of the German people. Hitler did not support Zionism. He saw it as a part of a broader Jewish threat. However, he briefly exploited it for tactical reasons in the 1930s to encourage Jewish immigration. His goal was not the establishment of a Jewish homeland, but the eradication of European Jewry entirely. Learn about what the Germans knew about the death camps by clicking here. Thanks for watching. History Hustler is signing off.